Hello everyone, dear viewers, listeners, readers, on whatever spot on earth you might be. Today we are talking about our spot on earth, our land, our nation. Listen, lately I have received a letter from an old friend of mine in the United States, from a beautiful, peaceful town 3 hours drive from the nearest big city. A typical American town, a typical American friend, a typical letter from America. A letter filled with insufficient knowledge and recompensed with excessive judgment. Let me quote. I fail to understand why the Russian church does not protest against the war in Ukraine, even supports it. I don't mean any riots or scandals, to be sure. The church is not about it. Good. And I don't take a lead from the United States news agencies or TV networks. I'm well aware of the atrocities and crimes on the Ukrainian side, torture of the prisoner of wars, human shields, booby traps, phony shows for the media, etc. But all this aside, this is a war that the Russians have started by attacking Ukraine, is it not? So, where is the voice of the church? That's what he writes and goes on. I know that the Russian church is independent from the state and owes nothing to the government. In many instances, its disagreement with the state policies is made public and widely known. For example, with regard to abortion, surrogate motherhood, pornography, or internet, etc. I also know that officially adopted social doctrine of the Orthodox Church even specifies civil disobedience to the authorities as a possibility, of course. And yet, I do not see a single sign of disapproval of the war on the part of the Russian church. So this is an invective against the Russian Orthodox Church and the Russian nation as a whole. As far as I'm concerned, I didn't have to ponder too much over this letter and answering it. What spells a question, a problem for a friend in a peaceful American town is not a problem for anyone here in Russia. Yet, it would be helpful to share my response with others who might need assistance on this painful and burning issue. And here it goes. Primarily and most importantly, the Russian church does oppose the war in Ukraine, just as it does any other war, to be sure. Quite unfortunately, but not quite incidentally, those news sources you follow do not report that the clergy and the laity of the Russian Orthodox Church, myself among them, pray daily and steadily in churches and at home for an end to the war in Ukraine, for peace and brotherhood between our peoples. Should you receive and recite the text of this prayer at least once, you would immediately realize how wrong are those who accuse the Russian church of failing to oppose the war in Ukraine. That basically would be the end of it. However, let me go on with my letter and answer the question which clearly worries you, but you have not asked it. Why the Russian Orthodox Church does not make vocal demands for the withdrawal of troops, for a ceasefire, for the release of prisoners, for the payment of reparations, and so forth. Or, put it bluntly, why, rather than praying for peace and justice, why doesn't the Church resist those efforts of the Russian government and armed forces to which they have been commissioned by the free will of the Russian people, by which the United States and the Western public and the NATO would like to present as criminal? In order to answer this pressing question, you have not asked it, but it is lingering in the air, certain mental effort is necessary, in excess of the knee-jerk reaction, which has become so much in vogue in places, various places. Lately, it's good that you do not take lead from the United States agencies or TV networks. Otherwise, you will hardly know anything about the war in Ukraine. The war, however, has only been on for a few months, for about half a year. But the subject matter we ought to discuss and make clear for ourselves requires a view in the past, deeper than the clip mentality of so many Western readers and viewers ever affords them. Intelligence that you, unfortunately, will rarely find, even in the most impartial news outlets. We will talk about that in our next issue. Stay tuned.